Evet, merhabalar. Birincisini Aralık ayında gerçekleştirdiğimiz sürdürülebilir kalkınma amaçları kapsamında su ve atıksu yönetiminin sürdürülebilirliği eğitim serisinin bugün ikincisini gerçekleştireceğiz. Marmara Belediyeler Birliği, Danimarka İstanbul Başkonsolosluğu ve Türkiye Belediyeler Birliği'nin işbirliği içerisinde gerçekleştireceğimiz bu eğitim serisinin ikincisinde Aarhus Kent Yönetiminin ve Danimarka Su ve Atıksu Birliği'nin, DANMA'nın tecrübelerini büyük oranda gelir getirmeyen sular perspektifiyle ele almaya çalışacağız. Ben Ahmet Cihat Kahraman, Marmara Belediyeler Birliği Çevre Yönetimi Koordinatörüyüm. Bugünkü bu programı Danimarka İstanbul Başkonsolosluğu'ndan Sayın Seda Kayrak Bilgen Hanım'la beraber modere etmeye çalışacağız. Çok fazla sözü uzatmadan konuşmacılarımıza daha efektif bir zaman ayırmak adına ben hepinizi saygıyla selamlıyorum ve sözü Seda Hanım'a bırakmak istiyorum. Seda Hanım buyursunlar.
Merhabalar. Danimarka Başkonsolosluğu Ticaret Ateşeliği adına ben de herkese, tüm konuşmacılarımıza ve dinleyicilerimize hoş geldiniz diyorum. Sürdürülebilir kalkınma amaçları hem Danimarka'nın hem de Danimarka İstanbul Başkonsolosluğu'nun tüm stratejilerinde artık bir şekilde entegre olmuş durumda. Biz de 2020 sonu ve 2021 olmak üzere sürdürülebilir kalkınma amacı 6, temiz su ve sanitasyon konusuna çok önem veriyoruz ve bu birazdan dinleyeceğimiz eğitim serisi ve webinar de bunun bir parçası. Aynı zamanda yine sürdürülebilir kalkınma amacı 17 amaçlar için ortaklıklar. Sanırım şu an Danimarka Su İdareleri Birliği, Danimarka Aarhus Su İdaresi, Marmara Belediyeler Birliği, Türkiye Belediyeler Birliği, Danimarkalı teknoloji üreticisi firmalar ve sizler ortak bir amaç için buradayız. Bu da bunun somut bir örneği. Diyerek ben sözü Danimarka Su ve Su İdareleri Birliği'nin CEO'su Karl-Emil Larsen'e bırakacağım ama öncesinde kendisini tanıtmak istiyorum. Çünkü gerçekten hani su sektörü deyince hem Avrupa su sektöründe hem Danimarka su sektöründe kendisinin çok önemli görevleri olmuş ve devam etmekte. Kendisi bir jeolojist eğitim anlamında. Kariyeri boyunca Rambol, Carlsberg gibi global danışmanlık firmalarında da çalışmış ve 2005 yılından beri Danimarka Su ve Su İdareleri Birliği DANVA'nın CEO'luk görevini yürütmekte. Yine hem Danimarka hem Avrupa Birliği hem de uluslararası anlamda çeşitli suyla ilgili derneklerde yönetim kurulu başkanlığı ve yönetim kurulunda yer almış ve özellikle vurgulamak istiyorum. Kendisi şu an Avrupa Uluslararası Su ve Su İdareleri Federasyonu'nun başkanlığını yürütmekte. Dolayısıyla su ve suyla ilgili tüm alt başlıklarda uzman bir kişi ve zaten kendisine sorularımızı yöneltme fırsatımız da olacak sunumu sırasında. Küçük bir not iletmek istiyorum. Kendisi sunumunu yaptıktan sonra aramızdan ayrılmak durumunda. Dolayısıyla sunumun sırasında sorularını alıp mutlaka kendisine yöneltmeye çalışacağız. Karl-Emil Larsen, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Seda. Yes, you are very welcome to ask questions during my presentation. Then I will just make a short stop. And I guess you have had my slides already. So I will not talk about every one of them because I've just given you a suite of different slides. And I will go through some of them and some I will leave very, very quickly. Let me tell you a bit about DANVA. Let me see if this works. Just a second. Here we are. I'll just introduce the Danish Water and Wastewater Association. It's a trade organization for all Danish water companies. We have a board, a political board, which include politicians and chief executives from the companies. We have approximately 100 companies with voting rights who sets the goal for me, what do I have to strive for? And the member companies are giving service to about 5.5 million Danes. Quite small compared to the number of inhabitants you are in Turkey, but this is the full Danish number of inhabitants. We have a number of staff at our secretariat is approximately 30-35. It's going a little bit up and a bit down. But approximately 300 colleagues from the member companies, they're organized also in the work in our house, in networks and different project groups. So we try to manage the work from all these people. We're entitled to attend public hearings and consultation that goes on national level, but also on the European level, which is more and more important. And as Seda said, I'm active in different international water associations as well, especially Euro, the European Federation of National Water Association, where I've been the president for some years and vice president. I've been in the top management for, I think, the last 20 years or something. I guess that's what's relevant for you. Then I'll talk a little bit about numbers and figures in the Danish water sectors. The total number of inhabitants was in the first quarter in 19, 5.8 million people. Then the amount that is extracted by the waterworks, it's about 373 million cubic meters. It's going down because we have focus of reducing the water consumption. We want to raise water efficiency. That has been a goal for the sector for many years. We have approximately 2,400 waterworks, and you can imagine with a small country like Denmark, it's about 400 kilometers to up and down and east and west. So it is also very, very small compared to Turkey. We are 100% based on groundwater for drinking water. It's very simply treated. We only remove iron and manganese. So because we have this hygiene barrier of the ground, we don't need to add any chloride. So if you get to Denmark, please taste it. It is a wonderful taste of the water in Denmark because it's really clean. You can taste the difference in minerals depending on what area you are in. So it's nice. I can recommend you to go. On the wastewater side, we have around 800 plants. This is also going down because it's more efficient to operate less plants. The annual treatment of wastewater is about a little bit close to the double, and that's due to inflow in our sewers. That's of course not very efficient, but we're working to get this number down. When we're talking about money, the annual turnover related to water supply is about 1 billion euro. Then the total turnover for waste services, that's 3 billion. That means that the wastewater service is around 2 billion euros. It is 100% public owned, but 35% of the waterworks are based on volume. It's small cooperatives in small cities in the rural areas. If you see on operation and maintenance, about 50% are done by public. That means the staff who are working at the different plants. And if you have the perspective on the construction work, it's only 15% done by public work. The rest is on contract after tendering in the private sector. So you can discuss if it's public or private. I'll tell you a little bit about benchmarking because maybe that is has been an important tool in my country because it has highlighted what issues it's worth working with. And then afterwards, I'll tell you a little bit about a different couple of things. We have been working with benchmarking or statistics for many years. The oldest book I have at my office is from 1918. You see a copy here. What we were interested in at that time, it is before when I started, I can tell you, it's about number of inhabitants in the different cities, number of houses with water, abstracted groundwater, average daily consumption, and so on. But this has, of course, we have taken this very much further, I think I would say. In 1998, the EU regulation on electricity started. And the Danish energy utilities did the first pilot of benchmarking. Denmark at that time, 8 of our members started a project on benchmarking because we were sure that if there were regulation on electricity, it was only a question of time before there will also be regulation on water. Then in 2003, Denmark benchmarking on drinking water and wastewater made the second pilot based on data from 2001. It was simple using Excel sheets as a basis for this comparison as it was. And then in 2004, we made the first portal-related database for the Denmark benchmarking, and we started already at that time to cooperate abroad with the Nordic countries, and we had a very strong cooperation with the Dutch Association on benchmarking, where we have started the European benchmarking, which is still active and running. And then in 2009, we did some improvement on the portal with new functionalities and so. Yes, I think that's, and it is now improved all the time, of course, whenever it's relevant. In 2010, in relation to the regulation of the water sector, the government introduced compulsory benchmarking as well on economics. It started. It was compulsory to attend, as I said. It started only in the first years, only on the operation activities, but in 2016, it also included all the investments. So this is now a total benchmarking on expenses. And that is to require higher efficiency, of course. So it's economical. Then in 2018, there was added a program on performance benchmarking, and it has been mandatory since 2018. That's on different environmental parameters, on quality issues, and then quite recently also focus on energy consumption and production, and the carbon dioxide footprint now also is in place. Of course, in related to the EU regulation, they have just agreed on the Green Deal to ensure to reduce the carbon dioxide footprint. And then there's the reporting to Denmark benchmark, which is volunteer. It has been working since 2004, and all our members who take part of this are paying us for doing this work, in addition to the membership fee. I think I will jump a bit fast on these, and it just shows you what you get out of taking part of the benchmark program. What is maybe very important is to say that when we have repeated this 10 years, then some of our members had difficulties in getting the time to use and work with the results. So another way to say it is so that they got something for their money. So therefore, we started a bench learning workshop where utilities of the same size and with the same challenges went together and talked about how they compared their data, and then almost every time there's one who is doing it a little bit better than the rest. and then they analyzed how the best did the work, and then during talks and during the workshop they could find the best practice among them. That means that you could raise the efficiency for almost all the participants in this workshop. So this is a very useful tool, I guess. I think when you have your data, you start benchmarking, you get knowledge on your sector, you start saving money because it comes quite easily, and then it results in raising the efficiency. And I think that is what we see in all sectors, and we see also that in all countries. It's not only in the North European countries. I think if you don't do benchmark today, I'm sure you'll do it you will start within the next 10 years or something. Jump this very fast too. We have optimized our timeline a lot, because the first couple of years when we did that, 10 years ago, for instance, it took a long time. That means because we did a lot of analysis, but we have optimized it by doing it automatically. So now what took about 9 months 10 years ago, we can do that now in 3 months. Because when this process has started, their tendencies, they can see that they can use this for making savings, for raising the efficiency. They cannot wait to have the result, if you understand what I mean. I'll just give you now a couple of examples of the output of the benchmark. For instance, the consumption of water, you can see it has going down, and now it's about this is for the last 40 years. We have a picture here on the household and also on the industry consumption, and on the top you have different new legislation put in place, and you can see almost every time there's a new legislation put in place, the water consumption is reduced. One of the things which maybe I'll come back to that a little bit later, but that's quite obvious that whenever you are putting some legislation in place, it has an effect. And I'm sure that's not only the Danes who follow what the government said. I guess most people do that. Our consumption is now around 100 liters per day per inhabitant, and that is quite low. Another example is the average household expenses for water. It has raised a bit. You can see since 2007. That is due to that we have had to raise activities on an adaptation to climate change. That is included in the tariff that the clients are paying. But average in 2019, which is the most recent data I have here, is around 750 euros. That equals approximately 6,400 Turkish lira. So it's probably a high number seen compared to what you pay for water. I think Denmark has the second highest expense on water compared to on global level, as a matter of fact. Another example, here I have compared the cost for a household depending on the annual living expenses into different selected categories. You can see for water and wastewater, which is the third from the top, it's only 1.3% of the total annual living expenses. If you look, for instance, on electricity, it is 2.1, and also district heating. We live in a very cold climate. It's snow outside where I'm sitting right now. It's about 3% of the annual living. So as a matter of fact, though water and wastewater compared to other countries are quite expensive, then it's a very small fraction of an annual living expenses for a household. There's one thing which is cheaper, that is to go to a dentist, but it's not so funny, is it? One of the new focus area, of course, we have this. This is just the overview. This is showing you the energy consumption for treating wastewater. Those who are pointed to the right, who are on above zero, that means that all these utilities are using energy to clean the wastewater. Those to the left, which are below, means that they're producing energy by treating wastewater. This is a new development and has developed, I think, the last 3 or 4 years. If we took data 4 years old, everyone were consuming energy. I guess maybe in less than 10 years, everyone will produce energy here. And the next step will be also to be neutral on climate. That means the carbon dioxide footprint. And this is based also to a demand from the government. They have set up targets so that the sector step by step will move in the direction they want, and that is to be neutral on both energy and carbon dioxide. If we look, for instance, on the operating costs, we can see the operating costs here from 2010 to 19. On the top, it's the cost on drinking water. That's the average cost for all the utilities in Denmark. You see it's 0.75 euros per cubic meter, and it has been lowered over all these years. So in the same time, we develop the sector with new services, we are able also to reduce the costs on operation, at least, because of course it costs. We have a raise in investments to give these extra new services that we add on all the time. And the same, if you look to the bottom, that's the operating cost on wastewater. It has also been, the efficiency here has also been raised a lot during in this 10 years period. But we also, you can see the development of the loans when this sector was born in 2010. Before that, the water activities were part of the municipalities. Now it's limited companies all. That means that they have got another structure and another possibility to finance the activities. And that one of them is taking loans to pay for these investments. But it's fine as long as we can keep the tariffs low and even going down. So it's at the moment not a problem for any of the water companies. Then I will tell you a little bit about the legislation. And if I start with the European Union, we have on water a lot of different directives. I think there are three important, the three most important are the Water Framework Directive. All this European legislation is framework legislation, so it's not detailed. That is done on the national legislation afterwards. We have the Water Framework Directive, we have the Drinking Water Directive, where there are set quality standards to drinking water. And then at the other end, we have the Urban Wastewater Directive. And all these directives are implemented in the different member countries of the EU, and of course also in Denmark. I think if we go back 20 years, then a lot of the Danish legislation on water and environment, it was used as a goal for the European legislation. We were very far 20 years ago. If today the European legislation has taken over, now we look towards Brussels to see what is new. So the European Union has really taken speed on these issues on water, environment, and energy, and I think that's good because it's a way to raise and ensure the quality of our nature. And for instance, the Water Framework Directive, it says in Article 9 that all these costs have to be recovered by the consumers. This is not implemented in very many countries. It's only a very few. One of them is my country, Denmark, and a couple of the other Nordic countries. In other countries, it's very often financed during taxes instead, and not the tariff, or in different kind of transfer from different banks or something, in investment banks. I think it's a scope to, it's really a big scope to get full cost recovery in all European countries. That is what the European framework is working on. But let's go through this on the economic regulation. This is only for the Danish sector. This is not implemented in very many European countries. In the UK, there's a regulation which is very similar, but I think that's the only other place than Denmark. We have of all our prices, we have a cap. We had a price cap. That means that prices are not allowed to exceed a given limit. Yeah, that was introduced in 2010 around, and then it gave focus only on the maintenance and operational expenses. Then in 2017, we implemented another cap, a revenue cap, which allows not to focus at a given limit. That gave instead the focus on total expending, including capital costs. I think I said that a bit earlier. There's no cap on the expenses. You can still take in loans, as I said, to pay for these investments. But there's a cap on the revenue. That means how much can you ask the consumers to pay. It is divided in different 4 boxes. The one on the top is the largest. That's the operational and capital costs, including the financial cost. This is the one that the government is putting on efficiency demand. They are not doing on the other part. You cannot. It's not about that. It's 50-50. I think the top box, the operational and capital cost, is around 2/3 of the total cost. So this is the part where they can put on efficiency demand. This cap is every year decreasing. The general cost yearly, that's 2% of the operational cost in the cap, and then variable cut on capital cost in cap. That's depending on the productivity in similar sectors in Denmark. So it is calculated based on different statistics. And then in addition, each company get an individual cut yearly. That's up to, this is based on the regulatory, and it's up to additionally 2% of the total cap. So that means that some companies meet a demand of up to around 5% per year. And that is tough, I can tell you. And of course, you cannot go on with that forever. So, but here we don't agree with the government. We think they should reduce the demand, but they don't listen too well, I guess. Then there's the difference. If it's small companies, then it's only a general cut on 1.7% yearly, no individual cut upon that. You can also have your cap increased. That is, for instance, if activities imposed or authorized by municipalities or the states, of course, they need to have the legal power to do so. And then the related cost to this, it will increase to increase in the cap. If you have to extend your supply area, that's also a possibility. Or if you have to replace sewers or pumping station, if it's made necessary due to other infrastructure projects. If it's only based on normal renewal, then you're not allowed to raise your income. And then periodical operational cost, co-finance and climate change and so on. So that can also result in an increasing cap. The other thing I will mention is pricing in the Danish water sector. That is maybe also interesting for you. If you look how is the average price composed, the average price for an average family, that's 2.15 persons who are in average consuming 82.69 cubic meters. That was in 2018. It cost 69 Danish crowns. That equals 79 lira, Turkish lira per cubic meter. And you can see to the right that the price on wastewater is about the half of the price. Then you put on VAT and different taxes, then it's almost 2/3. And then the drinking water is only inclusive VAT and drinking water tax is only 1/3 of the total water price. But it is a very high price. I agree with that. But we have the full cost recovery and then the polluter pays principle. That is two principles which are very central in national Danish legislation. Wastewater services, customers pay all the costs. And that is the investment, the operational, administrative, environmental, regulatory, VAT and taxes. Everything is paid per cubic meter and no tax grants to the water sector. That is full cost recovery. It's based on metering and it's mandatory by law that all customers, that is citizen and public, private enterprises and institutions as well, they have individual drinking water in their properties. And I'm sure you will hear a little bit more about that later. Also smart metering, which is nowadays in place, I think around 60% of the houses in Denmark, and also very many countries abroad. This has been implemented. The payments is calculated based on this standard price and then multiplied by the number of cubic meter you consume. And also the payment for wastewater services based on how much drinking water you consume. The tariff is, you could say, quite complex. On drinking water, it consists of a fixed connection fee part and then an operation fee part, which partly is fixed and partly variable depending on how much water you consume. And that goes totally the same for wastewater payment. It's just different figures. and you have got them here, and you have the figures also in your own currency, so that you can compare. I don't know how your structure is on variable and fixed prices. On water and also on sales of goods and services, general and also water in Denmark, we add 25% of VAT, and in addition to that, wastewater is taxed with an environmental tax of about 0.75 lira per cubic meter. Yeah, I think that's what's relevant in this slide. Then I'll talk a little bit at the end about water losses. It'll be quite quick swipe through some of the slides. The water losses in Denmark is, I guess I would call it, quite low. And I can tell you it hasn't come by itself. I know that all the utilities has been working very hard, and also here we have used legislation, sorry, or a penalty to get it as low as it is. In 1996, a penalty was introduced for water losses. If you are above 10%, then you have to pay a fee to the government, and that is then the water company and the consumers who are going to pay this fee to the government, and of course rather soon it's cheaper to do some renewal and get your water loss below 10%. At the same time, as I told you before, there was a demand on metering all evacuated and billed water, which gives us very solid data, of course. And then online metering also is improved. In 2017, it was then 46%, but I know it has raised a lot since as well. If you see here you have a graph showing the difference between the different companies. You can see those to the right are those who are above 10%. They have to pay this fine to the government. You can see there are two axes. We value it in two different ways. We can use the percentage to the right, that's above the 10%, or we can use the specific water loss, which is based on cubic meter per kilometer of per day. And that is the two of them, the water loss in percentage or specific water loss. And then there are real losses measured as infrastructure leakage index. I will go up through this very, very fast, I guess, because we are close to the time end. I can maybe use this one. What we evacuate from the waterworks and then what is billed to the consumers, the difference here is the revenue water, the non-revenue water, of course. And revenue water consists of unbilled authorized consumption. It's what we can call apparent losses, that's unauthorized consumption, metering inaccuracies, and then real losses, that means leakage into the underground. And I'll try to show the difference between the percentage and the specific loss measured by cubic meters per kilometer per day. And big water companies, they normally prefer water losses in percentage. And smaller ones, they normally like to measure or to illustrate the water loss in cubic meter per kilometer per day. And then I'll just make tease of Flemming, who will come a little bit later. For instance, in Aarhus, you can see, which is the second largest city in Denmark, they prefer very often percentage. and you can see yourself that's highlighted the dark blue. Why everyone wants to be number one is not so. It's difficult. But then we can also use the infrastructure leakage index, and that is an international water loss performance indicator developed by International Water Association, IWA, and that is it's where they compare the CAL, which is the actual water losses, and then with the unavoidable water losses, the UARL, and this fraction should be very close to one as close to one as possible. And if you do that, I will not go through these very theoretical things. I will just show you where all the Danish companies are. That's the blue at the bottom. You can see that it is very low. A normal level is where all the dots are between the blue and the red line, but all the Danish and companies who are attending in this test are at have a very extreme low leakage. The same goes for the German and also for the Dutch. They are also very low in water losses. Yes. If you want, you can access the Minister of Environment in Denmark, their homepage, and find a list of what has been doing on water losses in my country. Finally, I'll just invite you to Copenhagen. Denmark will host the next IWA World Water Congress. It was supposed to have been last year in October 2020. Then we hoped to do it this year in May, but realistically it was not possible. So the new date is the 11th to the 15th September 2022, and I hope to see a lot of you there. Thank you very much for your time.
Baylar Sen, biz çok teşekkür ederiz. Thank you very much for your presentation. It's very efficient for us. There are some questions from the Water and Sewage Administration around Turkey. I need to continue with Turkish.
Yeah. I have translation.
Çevre koruma maliyetleri ve kaynak iyileştirmeye ilişkin maliyetler de tüketicilere yansıtılıyor mu? Maliyet, yani faturalar oluştururken bu maliyetleri de dahil ediliyor mu? Dahil ediyor musunuz?
We no, they are not. At least not everything. We have also the government and also the municipalities have something which is financed by the tax paid. But what is necessary, for instance, to protect our catchment areas, that is billed to the consumers, but not if it's something which is related to recreativity around the city or something, then it's paid on tax money. But you could say the tariffs, that is from a person's right pocket, and then taxes from the left pocket. So there are only the citizens to pay in the end.
Evet, teşekkürler. Şimdi oldukça dikkat çekici bir konu. Siz maliyetleri anlatırken sabit ve değişken maliyetler arasındaki fark oldukça dikkat çekici geldi bize. Sabit maliyetlerin yüksek olduğunu gördük. Bunu biraz, bu maliyetlerin içeriğinden biraz bahsedebilir misiniz? Sabit maliyetlerin altındaki maliyet kalemleri ya da işte değişken maliyetlerin maliyet kalemleri, bu fark neden bu kadar fazla?
The fixed costs are, you could say, can be departed in one thing you have to pay once, for instance, a connection to get the pipe from the waterwork or to the water treatment plant. You have to pay that once for all. But then there's also there could be a fixed part annually, and that is to make sure that the payment is is fair. It's that the costs are shared fair among the different customers. But it's always a discussion. It's a political discussion, because what is fair? But that is in my country. It is partly decided in the parliament, the national parliament, and partly in the different municipal councils. But it is complicated, I agree on that. But on the other hand, it is a way to ensure that you get the full cost recovery. I think it's necessary to have this, to be sure that you get the cost covered.
Peki Bay Larsen, biz bugün biraz daha gelir getirmeyen sular üzerinden bu programı yaptığımız için o konuda bir soru sormak istiyoruz. Kayıp oranları yükseldikçe devletin buna bir ceza uyguladığından söz ettiniz. %10'luk bir ceza kayıp limitinin olduğundan söz ettiniz. Buradaki ceza uygulaması %10'un üzerindeki kayıp miktarına mı uygulanıyor? Yoksa toplam kayıp oranı neyse ona göre bir ceza uygulaması yapılıyor?
It is based on the total loss. So it is, as a matter of fact, it's quite expensive for them, because it is constructed that way because we want to get the loss down, and that's why it won't take many years. So it will be cheaper to renew your pipe instead of paying the fine. Okay.
Evet. Bir soru, çok fazla soru geldi bu arada. Gerçekten çok yoğun da ilgi var. Ancak sizin ayrılmanız gerektiğini de biliyoruz. Son bir soru sorarak artık sizi uğurlamak durumundayız herhalde. Ücretlendirmeyi yaparken asgari kullanımda da bir ücret alınıyor mu? Yoksa yani bir noktaya kadar bir ücretsiz su kullanımı mümkün, ondan sonra mı ücretlendirilmeye başlanıyor? Bu birinci sorun. Bunun devamında da tüketim miktarı ile fiyatlandırma arasında doğrusal bir ilişki mi var? Yoksa daha çok tükettikçe çok daha fazla ödeyecek şekilde parabolik bir ilişki mi var?
Yes and no. For instance, for very large consumers, industries, and so the waterwork can make a special agreement. You know, when you are the customer, you can almost always get a reduction. So that goes for the very big consumers. But for everyone else, there's no use included in the fixed price. So you pay for every drop, you could say. But as a matter of fact, for instance, in an area with summer houses, where you have a very small consumption, it could be a very few cubic meter you use per year. That is why they have a quite high fixed part of the costs, because there are starting costs to give the service to the different houses. In this kind of areas, you will have a high fixed price and maybe a lower variable price. But in a big city, you very often see that the fixed price is not very large, because everyone in a household, your household use the same as the neighbor's household. So it's more relevant to distribute the cost by the variable part of the bill. Okay. If there are any questions you think could be relevant, you are welcome to send them to me on an email. Just not very many, but I'll make sure you'll get an answer on them.
Carl Emil, thank you so much. Very interesting and in-depth presentation. Thank you for your time. We will share the presentation with the audience afterwards, which your contact details is also there. So I'm sure you will get some emails from the Turkish audience after the speech. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good workshop.
Thank you so much. Teşekkür ederim. Dinleyicilerimiz şu an Danimarkalı konuşmacılarımız saat konusunda son derece dakiklerdir. 1-2 dakikalık bir şeyle gecikmeyle diyelim. Saat 4'te tekrar başlamak üzere küçük bir ara veriyoruz. Programımız daha sonrasında Orus Su İdaresi ve Kamsur firmasının detaylı sunumuyla devam edecek. Aradan sonra görüşmek üzere.
Devam edebiliriz değil mi Seda Hanım?
Tabii ki. Ben sadece çok kısa bir tanıtım yapmak istiyorum.
Buyurun.
Herkese tekrar merhabalar. Ben Fleming Pedersen ve Atıksu İdaresi ile ilgili çok kısa birkaç cümle söylemek istiyorum sözü Fleming'e vermeden önce. İlk workshopumuzda Orus Belediyesi, Belediye Başkan Yardımcısı Bünyamin Şimşek Bey bize Orus'la ilgili çok değerli bilgiler vermişti. Orus, Danimarka'nın ikinci büyük şehri ve Atıksu İdaresi de bu şehrin su idaresi. Ve 2030 yılına kadar akıllı ve sürdürülebilir çözümler ve karbon nötr olma hedefi doğrultusunda hızla ilerleyen bir şehir ve Atıksu İdaresi de bu anlamda çok çeşitli aktivitelerde bulunuyor. Fleming Pedersen de bir jeolojist ve 5 senedir Atıksu İdaresi'nde görev yapıyor. Şimdi gelir getirmeyen su ve tarife sistemleriyle ilgili kendi deneyimlerini ve Atıksu İdaresi'nin deneyimlerini bizimle paylaşacak. Fleming, just a short introduction to Orus and your background. So now the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Seda, and hello everyone. From Carl Emil's presentation, you have heard a little bit about the framework conditions that we work on as a utility in Denmark. And for the next two presentations, me and my colleague Sally will present what we actually do in terms of operation in our utility to reduce our water loss in our system. Just a short introduction to our city. As mentioned, we are the second largest city in Denmark. We have around 300,000 inhabitants in the city, and we cover an area of around 468 square kilometers. In general, we consider our purpose as a utility in Aarhus as a very broad one, not only to serve the citizens of the municipality, but our purpose is to create health through the supply of clean water for the people and the planet. So that is also one of the reasons that we are here today, because we will very much like to contribute globally to improve the water conditions around the world. We will try to create a national platform for local and global solutions for a healthier water cycle. And we would like to offer and develop resource-efficient services throughout the entire water cycle. Climate adaptation is a big issue for us. In Denmark, we are affected by climate adaptation due to more heavy rainfall and rising sea levels. So that is also one of the things that we work with as a utility. And of course, the environment is important for us, as well as we would like to support the Danish water sector in the export markets with the solutions that we have here in Denmark. In general, we do not only look at drinking water, we look at the entire water cycle. So that is from a drop of rainfall hits the ground and until it is provided as drinking water and treated as wastewater and discharged to the recipient. So we consider ourselves as operator of the entire water cycle. We are very much into forming partnerships, public-private partnerships, partnerships with universities for the development of what we can do. So we try to operate a state-of-the-art resource recovery plant. As mentioned by Carl Emil, many of the sewage treatment plants in Denmark, they are in fact energy producing. So the sewage treatment plants that we have in our utility, they produce also more energy than they use. So that is just one example of what we can do in terms of CO2 neutrality. In Denmark, we are generally using groundwater as a water resource for drinking water. I think Denmark is maybe one out of two countries in the world that is entirely based on water supply by groundwater. So it's also very important for us to protect the water resource. Denmark is farmland, so if you come to Denmark, you will see agricultural activities almost all over the country. So it's very important for us to make sure that the activities that are on the surface not are harmful to the groundwater resource that finally will be used as drinking water. we work a lot with automation and digitalization, data management, and so on, in terms of having an efficient water supply system. And also, one issue for us is to separate stormwater from wastewater, because we have a lot of stormwater in our wastewater system, and eventually this water will reach the sewage treatment plant and make it necessary to have higher capacity in the sewage treatment plants than if it was just the sewage water that was going to the treatment plants. We supply around 50 million cubic meters of drinking water per year, and we treat around double as much, and that is because we have all this stormwater entering the sewage system. We have 1,500 kilometers of pipeline network for water supply and 2,800 of mains network for the sewage water, and we serve around 350,000 citizens in the municipality of Aarhus. We are very much focused on the UN SDG targets. So we try to incorporate these global sustainability targets in all what we do. In fact, just around a year ago, we were the first water company in the world to be certified according to the UN Global Goals for Sustainable Development. So that means that these goals are very present in everything we do. And of course, especially the goal number 6, clean water and sanitation, is very relevant for us. But also sustainability in cities and communities is important. Goal number 11, goal number 13, climate action. We are affected by climate change, so it is important. And goal number 17, partnerships for the goals. Also one reason that we are here today, because we are much into making global partnerships to help us globally to cope with the challenges we have within water. We work a lot with making sure that we have quality standards in all our procedures. So we are certified according to a number of different ISO standards. One thing I could mention is the drinking water quality ISO 22000 standard that is often applied in food processing industries. So basically what you see if you come to visit our utility, you will see same kind of safety measures as if you enter a dairy or a slaughterhouse, which means that we are very much into making sure that we have totally high hygiene from the source to the tap by the drinking water. So we have a number of procedures in place, and we are under review by external certificate bureau. So every 2 or 4 years, we have external review on all our procedures. So we are very much into keeping high quality on the standards that the procedures we use in our company. As I mentioned, we consider ourselves as being operator of the entire water cycle. And this picture here shows actually what our business is. Out from point number 1, we have the water in the water resources. We pump it up by pumps, and we treat it in treatment plants. Point number 3. Basically, in Denmark, as Carl Emil also mentioned, we only use groundwater. So the treatment here in Denmark is very, very simple. The only thing that we are allowed to do by law is to aerate the water and pass it to sand filters. So we don't add any chlorine or anything. So it's very important for us that the hygiene standard in our whole system is very high. We cannot allow any bacteria in the system because we don't have any disinfection in the system at all. And that, in fact, also combines with water loss reduction, because if you have a system with high water loss, you also have high risk for contamination of the system by, for instance, pipelines that are close to sewer lines. You have the risk of water leaking from the sewer lines into the pipelines in case you have high leakage rate in the water supply system. So that is also one of the reasons that we need to have our water loss on a very low level. In our water supply system, well, it's basically a traditional system, as I guess it's applied all over the world. It used to be a system completely operated by gravitation, which means that we pump the water from the treatment plants up to the water towers or the elevated storage tanks, and then the consumers are supplied by gravitation. But nowadays we are changing this system, so it is more by pumping the water in the system. We need to have a completely pressurized system right from the well to the consumer to have the high hygienic standard in it. So we cannot allow, in fact, underground storage tanks that allow where you have no pressure on the water that allows the water to be contaminated in old concrete underground storage tanks. So we are closing a lot of those old underground storage tanks nowadays and installing surface-mounted, fully inspectable tanks, some of them made by stainless steel, for instance, and they are pressurized, so we can ensure that the water is pressurized right from the well unto the consumer. Of course, we also operate the sewage system and the sewage plants, but that is not so much the issue today, so I will not comment further on that. Yeah, just some facts. We supply the municipality. We have around 90 production wells. We are only using groundwater, so they are situated around the municipality, as you can see on this map here. And from these production wells, we have 8 water treatment plants that treat the water and distribute it to the consumers. And we also have some elevated storage tanks and pumping station in the system. And we have around 62,000 water meters at the connections. Carl-Emil commented on the tariff system in Denmark, and here I'll just show you how it looks in our city. The consumer actually sees the price per cubic meter of, as you can see calculated here, they pay a price of 55 Turkish lira, equal to 55 Turkish lira per cubic meter they consume. And this water tariff here covers both that you get the drinking water, but also the discharge and treatment of the sewage water. So every time you pay for 1 cubic meter, that accounts for the most of Denmark, you pay both for the drinking water and also for the sewage water system. And we have a lot of taxes, even on the water price here. So that is also part of the tariffs that the consumer pays by per cubic meter. Last year, in our utility, we had an average per capita consumption of 99 liters per person per day in our entire supply system. And that has been decreasing for many, many years. So if you go like maybe 20 years back, you could see water consumption per person per day of maybe 130 cubic meters. So that has decreased a lot during many years. One of the reasons, of course, is the high cost of water in Denmark. So you will not see in dry summer times, you will not see many people watering their lawn in Denmark by water from the public water supply. It is simply too expensive. So that is one thing that drives down the water consumption, and also water efficient installations in the household, toilets that does not use so much water, and so on. We have a lot of that in place, and that has also caused that we have a quite low water consumption per person. As Carl-Emil mentioned, we only have one source of income in a water utility in Denmark, and that is by the tariffs. So the tariffs that is paid by the consumer, they need to pay for the entire operation of our company, basically. And also, as Carl-Emil mentioned, we are subject to benchmarking. So, you know, water supply is a monopoly. The consumers, they cannot go elsewhere and buy the water from another water supply. So we are supported to efficiency demands every year, and we need to basically produce annual savings on both our operational expenses and on our capital expenses of around 2% every year. So we need to be around 2% more efficient every year. And that also means that the water price that is experienced by the consumer, it has been more or less the same for many, many years. It is not increasing. So due to inflation and so on, it is the same, even though that we have this increase every year of around 2%. a little more about the operations and how they are paid in a company like us. Here you can see that basically the consumers, they pay for the operation of our company 468 million Danish kroner for the entire operation of our company. And that is based from service fees. That is the fixed part of the water bill and connection fees. Our city is growing very much, so we have a lot of new connections every year. So we also have a lot of income for these from these new connections. We have a total income of 644 million Danish kroner, but in fact we are investing more in our system that we can generate from the tariffs. So we have a lot of the investments financed by loans. As you can see here, we have annual investments of 524 million kroner, which actually means that we have a negative cash flow every year, and that is financed by loans, because we are not allowed to increase the tariff above a certain cap. So we cannot charge the consumer for also the investments. We need to have that financed by loan. So actually it looks like this. The income, 60% is from the charges. That is the variable part of the fees per cubic meter. So that is what the consumers pay by cubic meter. And then there's this fixed fee on the water bill. That's the gray one, the 9%. And then we have connection charges. That is new connections that because the city is growing. So actually we have quite a high income every year for new connections in our utility. That's around 30%. And also we have the rest, the 18% of loans that is financed. We finance our operation by. This income here goes into our operation costs. That is 32% of it, and the largest part, 2/3 of our whole income generated every year, is for capital investment. So that is basically renewal and investments in our system. The water loss has been reduced for many years in our utility. As our city is growing with around maybe 5,000 to 6,000 new inhabitants every year, and even though it is growing, you can see on this graph here that back in 1977 we produced 25 million of cubic meters of water every year, but here in 2018 this number was just around 15 million cubic meters per year. So our total production has been decreasing for many years, even though that we serve many more consumers every year. So that is caused by this reduced consumption per person in our supply system. So that is basically increased water efficiency at the consumer side. That is both for the domestic consumers, but also for the water consuming industries that we supply. They are much more water efficient nowadays than they were 40 years ago. Our water loss in the system also have been decreasing for many years. If we go back 40 years, it was around 12-13%. But nowadays it is even lower than 5%. And I've heard for last year, for 2020, we are maybe even below 4% in total water loss in the system. So that is calculated by the water, what water loss we have from the water leaves the plant, and what is accounted for by the consumer, by the meters. So that is the loss from the treatment plant until it is paid for by the consumer. The water balance for our system in 2018 looked like this. You can see here on the right hand side that the total water loss in our system was 4.9%, and that is the non-revenue water. and we had 95% then of revenue water that was paid for by the consumers. We don't have any unmetered consumption, so all consumption we have in our system is paid for by the meter. We have a little unmetered consumption, and some also that is, or the big part you can say is the leakage on the transmission system or the distribution mains. We have a leakage of 0.68 million cubic meters per year. So that is basically where we need to do something, that is leakage on the transmission and the distribution system. We have some water loss on the connections to the consumer also. One thing is that our responsibility, or as a utility, our responsibility for the water supply system, it ends at the boundaries of the properties. And basically, there's also a pipeline system inside the properties here in Denmark. And there can be some water loss where our responsibility ends at the boundary of the property and until it is accounted for by the meter. So that is something that we also are looking into. When you work with water loss reduction, there's a number of issues you need to consider. And in this presentation and the next one, we'll try to look a little into some of these. My colleague Sally will tell about operation and maintenance and information data. And I will show you a little about asset management in the coming slides. One thing that is important for asset management of the pipeline system is that you actually have some kind of good data on the system. In our case, we have a pipeline registration of the entire system, and we also have registration of the bursts in the pipeline system. So we know where we have the largest number of bursts and leaks in the system. We have a history of that, and we can focus our efforts in reducing water loss in those parts of the city where we have the highest burst and leak ratio. We also know it by the pipeline material. So, for instance, we know that we have old cast iron pipes, and we see that they have quite high burst frequency. So one thing that also we're looking into in terms of the renewal of the system is that we try to replace these old cast iron pipes, because that is where we have many of the leaks. So we have been mapping different kind of pipe material and how the burst frequency will increase when they are getting older. We have some, for instance, this blue line, this other one line is asbestos cement pipelines, and we see that they are quite high in burst frequency when they get older than 60 years. So we know that if we have pipes with that kind of pipeline material, we need to look into renewing it. And we have a system in place for asset management of all these kind of pipes, so we can generate reports that tells us when a certain part of the pipeline system needs to be rehabilitated or renovated. And of course, there's a number of different views you can have of this. Here is one view that shows which year expected rehabilitation of certain part of the pipeline system should be done, so we can plan many years ahead where to do the most efficient investments in the pipeline system. And again, different maps for prioritization based maybe on the kinds of materials we have in the pipeline system, and we can actually see if we do not do anything, we can expect a higher leakage rate on a certain kind of pipeline materials. And also we have project view, so we know in any parts of the city where we have ongoing projects in terms of rehabilitation of our system. So it's easy for us to communicate to our colleagues what projects do we have going on in our utility in terms of rehabilitation projects. If you want to know more about our utility and what kind of strategic targets we have, there's a link here where you also can listened to our CEO telling about the plans for the utility. And also one thing I could mention here is that there is also a national site for Danish water solutions that is called State of Green. So that is also where you can go and find inspiration on what we do here in Denmark in a number of different topics that it has relation to water. So that was my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Bay Pedersen çok teşekkürler. Gerçekten oldukça verimli bir sunumdu bizim açımızdan. Birkaç tane soru olacak sizlere dinleyicilerimizden. Yusuf Başaran'ın bir sorusu. Siz su bütçesini gösterdiğiniz tabloda sayaç okumalardan kaynaklanan hataların sıfır olduğuna, o hiç olmadığına değindiniz. Yani biz o tabloda onu gördük. Buna inanmak...
That's an estimate, but that's correct, yes. Yeah. Basically, what we believe is, well, of course, there is error on the meters. We have a renewal plan on the meters, so we go and test them regularly. If they have error above a certain level, we change the entire batch of meters in that area. So we know how old the meters are, and we test them when they reach a certain age. And if they are not having the right correction, we go and change the whole batch.
O zaman ihmal edilebilir bir su kaybının olduğunu söyleyebiliriz.
Yeah, that is our estimate. But of course there is some, but still we believe it's very low, but we don't know the exact number. Yeah.
Peki. Klorlama yapılmaması konusu çok dikkat çekti konuşmacılarımızdan, dinleyicilerimizden. Binaların boru hatlarındaki bir takım korozyon ya da az da olsa kayıplardan kaynaklanacak bir kontaminasyonu göze alabiliyor mu o zaman? Yani bu konuda bir abone ilişkilerini nasıl yönetebiliyorsunuz? Bu risk değil mi sizin için?
We have installed non-return valves at the connection. So basically, if something happens inside the building, it should not be possible for contaminated water from one building to enter back into the water supply system because we have the non-return valves.
Pekala. Son bir soru. Bay Larsen'in de sunumunda dikkatimizi çekmişti. Ancak kendisine sorma çok fırsat olmamıştı. Atıksu debisi neredeyse içme suyunun 2 katı. Dolayısıyla sisteme başka bir yani yağmur suyu girişimi var. Nasıl bunu açıklayabilirsiniz?
It is basically stormwater because in the old part of the city, the sewage system was not separated. So that means that both the sewage water and the rainwater goes into the same system. We are investing a lot these years to separate those two systems so that we have the stormwater separately and we can discharge the stormwater directly into the sea and not having it entering the sewage treatment plants. But basically the reason that it is stopped is because we have a lot of rainwater entering the system, stormwater, yes.
Anladım. Seda Hanım geldiğine göre soruları bitirmemiz lazım. Öyle anlıyoruz. Ancak son bir soru daha sormakta çok küçük bir soru daha. Bu fiyatlandırma konusunda bir soru. Su ücretlerini ve atık su ücretlerini belirlerken konutlar arasında farklı bir kategorilendirme, kamu kurumları arasında farklı bir kategorilendirme, böyle bir yönteminiz var mı? Yani her birim metreküp su kim kullanıyorsa kullansın aynı fiyat mı?
Yeah, it is basically the same. We might have some very big consumers like industries that consume a lot of water, and they may get some kind of a discount or a separate agreement. but all normal consumers and small industries and businesses and so on, they pay the same charge. Yeah.
Peki, teşekkür ederim. Buyurun Seda Hanım.
Fleming'e de çok teşekkür ediyoruz detaylı sunumu için ve sorular ve aktif katılım için de gerçekten çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Bence sunum yapan katılımcılarımız için de hem Türkiye pazarını daha iyi tanımak hem gelen soruları da cevaplamak her iki taraf için de faydalı oluyor diye düşünüyorum. Ben şimdi sözü Salih'e vereceğim. Salih'i de çok kısa olarak tanıtmak istiyorum. Salih kariyeri boyunca Danimarka'daki su idarelerinde çalışmış ve su ve gelir getirmeyen su konusunda uzmanlaşmış. Dolayısıyla onun da bize değerli katkıları olacaktır odaklandığımız konu çerçevesinde. Salih, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. Now I'm sharing my presentation here. My presentation will be about digital operation and procedures in Aarhus Vand for water loss reduction. So before I'm continuing my presentation, I would just like to tell you about what is my role in Aarhus Vand. So here you have the company structure. And just to illustrate where I am here, I'm part of the production. Flemming is as well. I'm sitting in operations where I'm operational engineer. One of my tasks here in operation is to be responsible for a group of people. We are 2 from operations and 3 from a service team that is actually carrying out the leakage detection and also leakage monitoring. So my presentation will of course include my perspectives of the machinery of Aarhus Vand, you can say, in terms of the leakage and non-revenue water. Yes. So the same picture as Flemming showed you about the non-revenue water and all the different way you can approach non-revenue water. As Flemming told you, I will concentrate on information data. That would be my first part of my presentation, and then on operational and maintenance. That would be the second part. So this is my agenda actually for the presentation. To begin, this information about information data looking into non-revenue water, I've actually taken the same picture as Flemming showed you of the water cycle, and then I would like to take this picture and focus on the data that we use regarding non-revenue water. So one of the key data information we need is of course the SKA'lar data from our waterworks. How much water do we actually produce, and how much water will leave the waterworks, and also the storage tanks. As Flemming told you, we have both storage tanks on waterworks but also around in the systems. So information coming from those points are very important. And then we've also been talking about water consumption. You can say the most important parts of the calculation would of course be how much water do we actually give the consumers, what is spent at the consumers, and the things that is left is of course the water loss, the non-revenue water. And right now, as we also have talked about, we are having a strategy in Aarhus Water actually to change our manually read water meters into smart meters for the next years. But what I will focus on for the next part of this presentation about data is the data we have in the distribution net, because the distribution net and also the distribution wells, it's points around in our distribution net where we can calculate stuff. This is where the non-revenue water, where we have the water loss. So I will focus on that part. We have we have something called distribution wells, and I will just introduce what I mean with that. It is actually measuring points around in our pipeline system, measuring water going into smaller parts of the network called DMAs. So an important data here is our SKA'lar data from the DMAs. And for those of you who are not familiar with that name, it is district metering area. So it is small parts of our distribution net where we can calculate exactly how much water is coming into this area. As you can see on the picture here, there is areas that are isolated, and we have calculation of a point going into the area. In Aarhus Vand, we often have 2 or 3 points to every area. And as you can see on the drawing here, there might be smaller areas into bigger areas. And we also have that structure in Aarhus Vand where we have the bigger zones. It is the big DMAs, and then those zones are divided into sections, like here, sub-districts inside of the big DMA. And we have a strategy also about DMAs, and right now we are having more and more of them. I will show you here a picture of a measuring point going into a DMA. So this is the things that we call the well, you can say. Here we have a picture where the top here is a manhole, and inside of the box we have the measurements. And right now this is the picture of sections in Aarhus Vand where we can calculate water going into the area, and also of course water leaving the area if that's the case. And in some years it might be, the plan is actually that it is looking like this. So we have an ongoing process for the next years where more and more smaller parts of Aarhus will be able to calculate exactly what water will come into the area. So what do we calculate at this measuring points? We calculate flow, pressure, and temperature. There are also other features, other components. For instance, we can also take water samples and so on. And it's very important for our daily operation that we have those measuring points and that we have online information coming into our SKA'lar system all the time. Another important data type, talking of non-revenue water, is of course pipeline registration. Yeah, this is the only slide I've chosen about this because it is important both to know what information do we need about the pipelines. We have a lot of information decided in Denmark that we want to know of our pipeline. And another aspect is actually to investigate how precise are our data. For instance, when you go out and do the leakage monitoring, then it is necessary to know how much can I actually trust on the data. Is it plus minus 20 centimeter on the map, or is it plus minus 5 meter? It is important when locating the exact leakage. So that is something to be taken into consideration in this. The last thing about data I will share is in Aarhus Vand we have developed a software where we can visualize different kind of data, and we use this software actually to have some kind of data flow. And I'll just show you here a print screen from the software. The idea here is actually that we have this software where everybody in Aarhus Vand has access to it, and actually it's also there are also access to the software in the field. So here on the top you see a map, and on the map you can see the pipeline registration. You can also see work orders if they are here. So on the right there is a specification of the work order. Of course, it's in Danish. But the idea is that we have this tool where everybody in the company can see the same. And on the bottom, you can see 2 pictures, and it is because the field workers can directly take pictures. They can also make small videos and audio calls, so they can put information very quickly into this program, the software, and then we know in the office what is happening. And my job is very much based on analyzing what is happening, what has happened for the last month, and then I also use the same tool. And also one of the last slide Flemming had was actually that the planning and the renewable projects of pipeline is also visible in the same platform here. So this was just to show you how it is very efficient for us to collect data and see it all together. For the data flow, I'll go more into details with the work order flow for the next part of my presentation here. And it will be about operation and maintenance. And of course, as I told you in the beginning, we had this group of people that I'm leading, where we are both focusing on the monitoring of water loss and also leakage detection. And the monitoring part and the leakage detection are linked very much together. But before I go into detail with those 2 parts, I would like to show you how we are organized, and also how does a normal work order actually, how does it flow between the different parts. So just to introduce this part, I will make a repetition about our structure here in Aarhus Vand, because I'll show you a line called operation, and that is where I am, where my role is, and also service will have a very essential part here. I will also show a line in the bottom in a while called planning, and the planning is the part of Aarhus Vand where, of course, the plans and it's the last thing that Flemming showed you will be carried out there. And they are, of course, very they are very eager to have the right information from us. So that's why they are also part of the flow of the data. Yeah, I'll go into details with this part as well, the workflows. As you can see on the top, I have put operation, and this is where my role is. And this is a workflow from a typical leakage or burst. How does the data from this incident go through our organization? It starts in operation, where it might be a leakage I discover in our monitoring software. We have a software called Key Zones where I'm looking into almost daily. It can also begin with a call from a customer or other that finds a spot in our area with water on ground. Then the call will also come into into operation in our team. Then the next step will be actually to make a work order. And the work order will then go from our team into our service team, where the field workers will receive it, and they will go out and locate the burst. They will use one of the methods I'm showing you in some slides. And when they have fulfilled the job in the work order, there might be a false alarm closing it, saying there are no leakage, but often they actually find a burst or a leak, and then it would make a work order number 2, where we have this work order going directly into another part of the service where they're actually doing the pipe repair, also going down to our constructor. We have a constructor that do the digging, another company that we work together with in partnership. Looking at the workflow from they receiving a work order number 1 until the repair is made, here response time is also important to notice, because it is very different how we react if we have if we investigate a leakage and or if it is a burst. And I like to put those different, because for instance in December we received a burst, and it was because two young guys in the middle of the night saw that water was coming up to the surface in the center of Aarhus. And actually this work order was ended before we met in the morning at the office. So if it is a burst and if it is a critical place and if it is big, then response time is a matter of hours. On the other hand, if it is leakages we are looking at, then it might be a tendency that I see on the monitoring software. And sometimes I'm actually looking at the tendency for weeks before I decide whether we should go out and look for leakages. And if we are looking for leakages from the software, then the work order number 1 might also be taking some weeks actually, because it is a big area where we need to locate where are most leakages, and after some weeks to locate exactly where is it. So yeah, response time is very different, and we actually operate in both levels in our team. The end of the workflow here is about the registration of the incident and registration of the exact burst, the material, the water flow out of the burst and so on. And this part is going directly to planning, because they are the ones actually using it for pipe replacement planning. I'm right now about to make a project where we this year will look into this this part of the workflow to optimize and to make it more smooth and less manually than it is now. So we are always looking into where can we make it better. Yes. Now I'll just show you about leakage monitoring, because yeah, I'll start here, because 3 to 4 years ago, this was actually the way we did it. We looked into a graph like this. This is information from a DMA. What is the water consumption in this DMA? And the bottom of the figure you can see here is the nighttime. Every night it will go down, and then in the daytime we will have some consumption. And it is the nighttime that is interesting. For instance, here you can see this is an example of nighttime flow into the DMAs. If this changes suddenly, or if there's a tendency, but here if it's suddenly, then it's a new leak, or it's a consumer that is changing their nighttime consumption. But here it was a leak. So this was actually the way that that we were monitoring leakages some years ago. We then decided to invest in a monitoring software. And the idea is here to, of course, we could see actually the bursts and the changes directly from our SKA'lar system. But the idea with the monitoring software is actually that we can have a quicker overview of our zones and sections, the DMAs. With this software, key zones we have here, there are many different on the market, but here the idea is that the colors can give us an idea of where to look into. The green colors indicate that everything is fine, and red and yellow indicates that we should look up to it. But it's the same principle as directly in our SKA'lar system, where we have a change in flow curves. You can see here the red one is flow, and the yellow is estimated consumption. Yes, leakage detection. When we have an idea of leakages or bursts, then of course we need to go out and locate exactly where is it. And there is a planning before going out and locate leakage. It is to decide what method to use. Here are the methods that we use in Aarhus Vand. The pictures here is from a trailer. We call the method trailer with a tank, Aarhus Vand metoden. And it is, if you're familiar with the theory, then it's like a 0-point method. It is used the way that we divide a small area and close the inlet to the area and then provide water from this tank into the area. And then we can measure exactly how much water are spent in the area. And the idea is that the area should be so small so we come down to 0 consumption once in a while, and then there are no leakages. But of course, this is not used when we need to locate the precise spot. Then we need other methods. Here are some examples. You see correlators to the left. Oh, sorry. Correlators to the left and acoustic methods, microphones in the middle. You have a ground microphone and also a stick, and those are both of them are to locate exactly where is the leak and to point out to the colleagues that are going to make the repair. Sometimes we use gas, but that is not often. Yes. To end, I've just taken also a slide about pressure management, because pressure is also very closely linked to leakages. It is because the higher pressure you have in your system, the more water will actually go out through your leakages. But of course, in Denmark, we also have a minimum pressure to make sure that everybody has enough water. So we are dealing with a minimum pressure limit and planning our system out from there. It is also essential to reduce variation because changes in pressure can cause more damage to the pipelines. Yeah. That was the most important part I think I've chosen. So thank you for listening. And of course, any questions, just let me know.
Selin Hanım, çok teşekkür ederiz. Gerçekten oldukça detaylı ve operasyonel bir sunum oldu. Bu gelen sorulardan bir tanesi, en yüksek kayıplar daha çok nerelerde oluyor? Yani konutlarda mı oluyor, yoksa böyle daha büyük işte işletmelerin, sanayi tesislerinin olduğu yerlerde? Buna ilişkin bir istatistiğiniz, aldığınız kayıtlar var mı?
We do actually not divide it into that. We have information about like Fleming showed you what kind of pipes are there. That is actually more, yeah, that information affects it more. So it's cast iron and yeah.
Anladım. Belki kaçırmış olabilirim. Çok emin değilim ancak uzaktan sayaç okumanın su kayıp kaçaklarını müdahalede, azaltma oranında böyle doğrudan spesifik olarak şu kadar etkiledi diyebileceğiniz bir rakam var mı? Çünkü ülkemizde uzaktan sayaç okuma sistemlerine yönelik bir eğilim yavaş yavaş biraz daha belirginleşiyor. Bununla ilgili takdir edersiniz ki şu anda su kayıplarını azaltma noktasında önemli bir noktada Türkiye'deki su idareleri. Dolayısıyla bu tür teknolojileri sistemlerin içerisine alıp almamaları konusunda sizin fikrinizi merak ediyoruz.
I think that the situation in Denmark and the situation situation at you are very, they are very different. I can say from a Danish perspective, our goal with the remote sensing with smart meter is more to be more to have better information of where to look for the leakages. So that's actually regard to non-revenue water. That would be what we hope, that we can actually spend our operational cost more efficient and find the leaks faster. But of course, our water loss is low, so it is more a matter of keeping it low with less operational costs in Denmark.
Anladım, teşekkürler. Son bir soru daha var. Onu da ben doğrudan Ertuğrul Diktaş'ın sorusu. Waterhammer su kaybını etkiliyor mu? Ayrıca katodik koruma yapılıyor mu?
The last thing, what is? Can you repeat the last part of the question?
Tabii, katodik koruma yapılıyor mu diye yazmış. Belki Ertuğrul Bey biraz daha açıklayıcı bir şekilde ifade edebilirse daha anlamlı olacaktır. Ertuğrul Bey'den o soru gelen...
I can answer.
Tamam, lütfen buyurun.
Because of course, when we have a pressure going directly into the system, we often, if we have had an incident, then that we have calculated, we often actually see that we have more bursts in an area. So yes, it is affecting it.
Anladım. Hoş geldiniz Seda Hanım.
Hoş bulduk.
Son bir soru olarak 2 barlık basıncın düşük gelmiyor mu 2 barlık basınç? Acaba binalarda, özellikle yüksek binalarda hidrofor kullanımı mı söz konusu oluyor bu durumlarda?
Actually, we have this regulation in Denmark that actually it is enough to have 2 bars. Often there is 3 to 4 bars, but in the areas where it's lowest, it is 2 bars. And sometimes higher buildings or industry that needs more pressure, they're actually installing pressure for themselves. So they are responsible for themselves if they want a higher pressure.
Peki, teşekkür ederim. Buyurun Seda Hanım.
Salih'e çok teşekkür ediyoruz detaylı sunumu için ve sorular için de tekrar dinleyicilerimize teşekkür ediyoruz. Sabrınız için de bu uzun webinarlarda dikkati toplamak ve uzun süre izlemek bir hayli zor oluyor ama herkese gerçekten katkıları için teşekkürler. Şimdiye kadar konunun uzmanlarından Avrupa Birliği, Danimarka, su idareleri özelinde gelir getirmeyen su konusunu teknik ve operasyonel anlamda enerji verimliliği perspektifinde inceleyen sunumlar dinledik. Sorular arasında da hep akıllı sayaç okuma sistemleri, uzaktan okuma sistemlerinin gelir getirmeyen suya etkisi konusu da soruldu birkaç defa. Bu anlamda şimdi dinleyeceğimiz sunum ve konuşmacımız pek çok soruyu cevaplandıracaktır diye düşünüyorum. Michael Hansen, Danimarka'nın ve dünyanın aslında akıllı sayaç okuma sistemleri konusundaki en bilindik ve saygın firmalarından Kamstrup'ta 30 senedir görev yapıyor. Dolayısıyla konuya çok hakim diyebiliriz. Ve biz kendisinden akıllı sayaç okuma sistemlerini kullanarak somut enerji verimliliği örnekleri, somut verimlilik örneklerini aslında bize açıklamasını istedik. Ve kendisi de bize yine bu konulara odaklanaraktan detaylı bir sunum yapacak. Michael, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction. I hope you all have some energy out there. It's my pleasure having the opportunity here to present you with some inspiration in terms of smart metering. I will spare you for any commercial introduction of Kapsamında. Just say that one of the reasons why we're here today, we've been invited, I think, because we are a Danish company, but also because we are one of the pioneers when it comes to smart metering. We are a global player. We are active around the world where smart metering is taking place. We would like to see ourselves as top 3 or top 5. That I'm sure can be discussed, and it also depends, are you measuring on quality or in terms of numbers. Anyway, once again, thank you very much for giving me the time to give my story here. Let's see. Yeah. I won't spend time introducing myself, apart from saying I'm employed by Kapsamında. I look after our business in Europe and the Middle East. I've been within Kapsamında for 30 years, and it's been quite an extraordinary journey where I would say we've gone from being a meter supplier or a meter manufacturer, if you like, whereas today we are really a service provider. We are bringing complete systems in turnkey projects. We are operator also of the meter reading solutions if that is requested. So the whole process is really different. The scope of involvement that we have with our partners has improved quite significantly. Right. So the agenda, to keep it short here, I would like to give you a bit of introduction to how do we see digital metering, how is that executed around in the world. So typical examples. I would take you through some specific numbers from one of the first utilities that we with whom we executed a complete turnkey project involving full-scale, full automatic digital metering. I shall then move a bit into metering and more. And I'm actually going to take the lead from Aarhus Water and the great presentations there, where leakage was addressed in terms of distribution and transportation perspective. And I would like to take a little bit the same angle, but more on consumer perspective or into the connection pipelines. I will add some customer cases out of that, and of course, Christian's answer. So we start a little bit where we are today, and we look a little bit into tomorrow's solution, if you like. So there we go. Yeah, first of all, I mentioned that Kapsamında is one of the pioneers. We have actually, as we speak, we're coming close to 30 years of experience of ultrasonic metering technology. We started not in water, we started in district heating, where the challenges were really hard years back. That or similar technology has then 10 years back been introduced into the water industry, where we see a tremendous growth in that line of business taking place, not only in Europe, but actually on a worldwide perspective. one of the characteristics taking out of ultrasonic metering, or maybe you could even say digital metering, is not the tolerances at the meter when you get started. I would claim that any meter that you put in operation around the world, they have a fair, if not a really good accuracy when you put them in operation. The challenges comes when it's been in operation for years, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. That's when you see the differences, and that's where you have also the risk for losing revenue. So you might end up having commercial losses if your meter accuracy drops, which is not happening with digital, or at least with ultrasonic based meters. I'm not talking camstop meters here, I'm talking ultrasonic meters in general. So that is a, let's say, a technical feature that is part of the design, if you like. When we speaking smart metering, you hear it all the time. You can say smart metering is the meter itself in a more or less digital version. We've seen meters that are based on traditional technology and then added a communication unit. Camstop, we have a full digital, so it's ultrasonic based, and then data communication from there. So there are various levels of smartness, so to speak. Then there is an infrastructure, or put in another way, data has to be taken from the meter to the central part. And that is done either by the walk-by, drive-by, by here in this picture here is illustrating a radio network, could also be often discussed at the moment, IoT. We don't see them in numbers yet, we don't see them in scale, but it's something that will also come in the future. So, and there are pluses and minuses on both aspects here. And finally, the software side, I mean, the headquarter is where the data is coming in, and the data are converted into information and thereby being made in an intelligent and formative way. So I would like to introduce you to a specific project we did. We actually started 4 years back, and it was one of the first full-scale, full digital systems that we supplied in Denmark, and it is a client called Herning Water, medium-sized utility. And just to put a few numbers, the project itself was involving supply of 17,000 meters, primarily for residential applications. It was a fixed network, we call it, so it was including the data communication infrastructure. Water balance software was part of it, and also project management was part of the supply scope. So it was a full scope, a full turnkey project that was part of the partnership. Having been in operation now for full 2 years and even a bit further, but at least with 2 years of experience, the utility was looking back and say, what was the gainings that they got out of it money-wise? And they were able to say that the savings were 340,000 euros, and on top of that, there was an initial savings of 142 euros. And maybe more important, it gives you a bit of a hint of where we are, 6 years of return of investment. The values created might be interesting to see is increased revenue because of a better accuracy, increased service towards the customers or to the consumers, simply because more information could be converted to the consumer. So a more positive dialogue with the consumers. Optimization on the administration as well as assets management. Right. So to go a bit more deeper into that, so one of the aspects was the remote reading itself. So the physical action or handling of manual reads. Actually, reading in Denmark is done in, I don't think there's nowhere else in the world that is done by a self-reading process. But even doing it like that, still there are tasks involved which are costly. And in addition to that, one of the things that were seen very positively at the utility was that the quality of the data accelerated, and that allows them not to spend time on cleaning up the data, but really to do more key-oriented work. Right. So the savings out of that, you can say the reads itself, 64,000 euro, and the quality of the data, the improvement of the quality helped them to save another 38. So 102 euros, 102,000 euros on a yearly basis. Also, handling in respect to customer relocation. So when a customer is relocating, you have to make your end of the story readings and start the next consumer name, etc. So they estimated that to be, or calculated that to a yearly saving of 7,000 euros. Probably even more important was the assets management. So because of the increased information of the pipe network, the consumption profile, the loads at any given time, to have that information, they have estimated that as having a 10% impact in terms of more intelligent investments. So invest where required, where necessary, rather than just because of it's on the plan or it is on the timeline. Similarly, also another 10% gains was achieved on the operational side. So daily operation, less pipe or insufficient, less or more efficient energy uses. Yeah, I think that is what I want to say here. Accurate readings was one, also giving a relatively high number. And finally, one-time savings was on the fraud side. Actually, when the smart metering solution was put in force, it was actually a number of frauds was detected, whether it really was people handling around with the meters, or it was even bypass installations. People are always very creative when it comes to fraud, but at least they were able to find value of 100,000 euro frauds that they could stop, and hopefully it won't happen again. Right. So these were all gains for the benefit of the utility. On top of that, also there are benefits for the consumer. And one very specific thing is that frost, so meters that were damaged due to frost, actually could happen today also. They got the alarm because you can see that the meter doesn't react any longer, so you get a clear signal something is happening there. So they were able to repair it in due time before losing water. And also leak detection. Actually, the the meter itself is able to not to measure, but to detect an inappropriate consumption profile, and by that indicate whether there is a reason that there could be a leak after the meter inside the property of the consumer. So those are benefits that you might not put direct money on it, but it has a value for the consumer, which is also seen as a positive thing. All right, and this is the CEO of Herning Water. It's the name of the utility. He put forward this statement. So simply to like better service and to motivate people to save energy, and by that save money. Yeah. So I like to step into the next part of my presentation now, which is 5 years back, we had a discussion and said, how can we actually improve our meter? The feature of our meter are the things that we can put into it since we have it anyway. And we actually came to a conclusion that it might be possible actually to introduce acoustic leak detection inside the meter. So that was a pretty long process. We then launched a meter 1.5 years ago, which has acoustic leak detection. So I'm gonna introduce you a little bit to the background and the output out of that. Yeah, a little bit of inspiration here. So what we were thinking about was that taking a view on a typical distribution of or split of leakage seen in a water utility, and these numbers here would represent a typical North European picture. Might be different in Turkey, and definitely also in our part of the world. It's very individual from area to area, from utility size, etc. So just take it as an inspiration. But we realized that 31% of the leakage, or the non-revenue water, if you like, is to be found in the connection pipe. So from the distribution network into the meter installation, or the connection to the consumer. So we thought that would be worthwhile having a look at that. So if we were able really to detect or get message on other irregularity in the connection pipe, that would have a huge value for the utility. So what we did, we took our existing meter and we added a noise, what do you call it? A noise sensor or noise censoring functionality into the meter. So basically we said the meter is busy primarily with metering, but when it is not doing metering, then we can do the noise noise signalizing. So we put that into the meter. We made a software, or algorithm and a software, which is the way to understand the data from the meter and to illustrate to the operator the situation. So it's a bit like the data doesn't have a value itself, but at the moment where you're able to understand them and present them by help of algorithms, by help of presentation material, they become valuable, and action can be taken out of that. Okay. So from the trialing, which is now almost 3 years back, this is an example where we have 3 meters where we we simulated a leakage, and we can see here how each of the 3 meters are signalizing, yes, there is a noise level here, and after fixing it, it goes down the same for this one here. So this was an example of one of the trialings that we were doing together with local utilities. Another example that we got out was we had one leakage here, but actually we had 3 meters able to monitor that leakage. So we had, let's say, the yellow one here is indicating where the leakage is let's say, it's a close by meter, but we actually had 2 other meters, neighboring meters, also able to detect a leakage, but in a weaker way. So these were all things that we needed to understand better, and we needed to bring into our algorithm, and then eventually put forward in the program. Yeah, I think this is not really okay. Anyway, so if you have a pipe network, let's say you have leakage in those areas here, or put in another way, you have noise indications that noise is registered in those areas. You can monitor, you can get closer into it in your software, and you will also be able really to see for each and every single application or installation to see how is the noise measurement done, and or the results of the noise monitored. Maybe I should say here, the noise is seen as an average or lowest one over 24 hours. And typically that would be in the nighttime, equal to what Sally was saying also. Nighttime is actually where it's important. Also because here you won't have too much additional noise. Could be pumps, could be hamburgers, could be external factors that have an influence. But in nighttime, things normally are more quiet and thereby more stable. All right, so the output is that you have data from each and every single installation. You will have not necessarily a leak information, but at least a leak indication that could be a leakage. And you can start to prioritize your work. You can analyze data for a quicker assessment of the situation, fixing things in a quicker way, and maybe even more important, assets management, because it really helps that you have a monitoring system that is telling you that maybe in the east you don't really see issues, but in the west, that part of the city, maybe you see a lot more leakage reports, which could be an indicator of that's where you should spend your money when repairing your pipe network next time. Just to say, so this is just an example of one leakage that was found on a connection junction. So I'm just giving you a couple of examples here. This one was actually an iron pipe that was leaking. You see that one here. We had the leakage, and it was found because of the signal indicated. A few numbers here. This is from a utility in the south of Denmark, a very small one, but I'm taking it because it's one of the first ones where we achieved some specific results and could actually put some benefits out of it. Also here, these guys, they have DMAs. Today they operate with 14 DMAs. The fact that they have such a detailed information now, they might not want to go any further, so this will do for them. They are saving 48 hours in a year for spent on leakage searching. Put in another way, they used to spend 10 days on each leakage that they had to find and repair. And today's time spending is down to 1 day per leakage. So that was a direct improvement. You could convert that into cost. And what they are claiming is more important to them is they get a health check, online health check on their pipe network, not only on distribution, but all the way out to the utility, to the consumer. Yeah. That brings me to the end of the presentation. I will be very pleased to answer questions, if any. Please feel free.
Mikail Bey, çok teşekkürler. Bir tane soru var sizlere iletmem için bana yönlendirilen. Sayaç yerleri ve montajları hakkında standart bir uygulama var mı? Ev, iş yeri, endüstriyel bir kuruluş gibi yerlerde tüketicinin sayaç modelini tüketim miktarına göre mi belirliyorsunuz? Bu konuda birazcık daha detay merak ediyoruz. Erdal Kandemir Bey sormuş soruyu.
Not sure I fully understood the nature of that question. I mean, the meter is located at the consumption. It's a consumption meter. Could also be a DMA, but I would say when in terms of leak detection, it is a consumption meter. But I'm not sure whether that was the question.
Sorunun sahibi Erdal Kandemir Bey belki bir miktar daha açıklayabilirse Bay Hansen de ona göre bir cevap verecek. Bir soru daha var. Erdal Bey onu yazarken belki onu konuşabiliriz. Danimarka'da evsel kullanımlar için kullanılan sayaç tipleri neler? Hız esaslı mı, hacim esaslı mı ya da ultrasonik mi? Evsel kullanımlar için.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. The meters, whether it is for industrial or for household applications, they are all ultrasonic based. So it is basically we are monitoring the speed of water upstream and similar the speed of water downstream, and we are the delta time is then the what do you call it? The detection functionality. So it is an ultrasonic delta time principle.
Peki. Benim de bir sorum olacak eğer son bir hakkımız varsa. Bazı bölgelerde sayaçların malzeme olarak çalınması gibi olaylarla karşı karşıya kalınabiliyor. Acaba bu tür bir asayişi ilgilendiren konularla ilgili böyle bir güvenlikle ilgili bir çözüm öneriniz, bir operasyonunuz var mı?
Okay. One of the main reasons for stealing meters is actually, well, there are two reasons. One is because of the value of the material that is built of, and that goes for all metal body meters. The meter we have is built on PPS, so it is a fiber construction, which doesn't have a scrap value. So you can say in that respect, the meter doesn't attract those people. The other part of people who might steal it or is simply just to avoid the the billing, and thereby hope to avoid the invoice for water. And here we can say, since the meter is communicating online, the utility will see immediately that the meter is not there, or it's not working. So there will be a clear indicator right away that there will be a flag.
Tamam, şimdi oldu. Türkçe'de bir tabir vardır, yükte hafif, pahada ağır diye. O sayaçlar demek ki bu tabire uygun değil. Erdal Bey sorusunu güncelledi Seda Hanım. İsterseniz onu da sorduktan sonra bitirelim, olur mu?
Tabii ki. Ben aslında şeyi de bir çevirmek isterim. Erdal Bey'in aslında sorusu önemli bir soru. Biraz önceki sorduğu soruda ben onu tekrar bir yöneltmek istiyorum Michael'a. Michael, the question just asked a few minutes ago is about is there a metering standard in Denmark that depends on the consumption level, for example? Is there a regulation or a standard that you can decide which meter to use? I think that will be a okay translation.
No, the choice of meter is not standardized or given by, that is solely the decision of the utility. The only thing is that any meter put in operation has to fulfill the European approval process. So it has to have it's called an MID certificate. Furthermore, the meter has to have a verification process, and that means the meter, once it leaves the manufacturing line, it will be put on a laboratory, on a test bench, and to verify the performance of the meter. But I think that goes all over at least all over Europe.
Michael, I believe the question maybe was the range of meters that Kapsamında provides in terms of usage, cubic meters. What is the range?
The range. Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, the range we have in the program as we speak goes from DN15, so and up to DN100. I think that is equal to 40 cubic nominal flow. No, 65 actually. Yeah. Thanks, Flemming.
Bir tane daha soru var. Seda Hanım, ne yapalım? Devam edelim mi yoksa nasıl derseniz?
Yani birkaç dakika daha devam etmemizin hiçbir sakıncası yok. Tabii ki hala katılımcılarımız var. Son soruları da toparladıktan sonra birkaç dakika içinde bitiririz tabii ki.
Okey. Kenan Mahmutoğlu Bey sormuş. İngilizce sormuş. Ben de İngilizce okuyorum. Yalnız buradaki ROI ne demek oluyor onu bilemiyorum. Doğrudan
Return on investment.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you make any assumption that Internet of Things will decrease a ROI ratio?
Hello? Yeah, okay. I'm afraid the line.
I will just take over. Let's make it the last question, and it's already in English, so I'm just reading it. Can you make an assumption that IoT will decrease the return on investment ratio? And would you elaborate just a bit of advantages and disadvantages?
Yeah. Okay. I would guess that Internet of Things, generally speaking, will increase the volume, or should we say increase the level of the amount of smart metering executed around the world. So purely from a number perspective, I would assume that is dragging down the cost. But it will also swap a little bit. The investment will be moved from CapEx into OpEx. Whereas if you don't have an IoT, you have a higher investment cost, but your operational cost will be lower. But I would say future will drag down the cost because of volume, because of improved technology. Whether that will be a lot, or I'm actually not sure the IoT companies are completely in place. We are following it very closely. We have decided not to do IoT at present time because the ecosystem is not there yet. We don't see projects being executed so far. So I would say the positive thing about IoT is that it is something where the utility don't have to involve themselves with the infrastructure. The downside is right now, if we see it specifically for water, I would say right now, any IoT solution is more battery hungry than the given radio solutions that you find on the market. So power, or put it in another way, battery lifetime is something that right now is maybe not completely mature for the IoT specifications, but I believe that they will come, and they will come in a not too far distance from now, time-wise. But I think it is really more down to, do you want to be owner and operator of the infrastructure by yourself, or do you want to outsource that to a third-party company, being, for instance, the telco or other solutions? Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much Michael. And artık sanıyorum
sorularımız bitti.
Cihat Bey, artık yavaş yavaş toparlayalım isterseniz. Çevirmen arkadaşlarımız da yoruldu ama tabii şöyle bir notumuz da olsun. Soruların hepsini not ediyoruz. Ve cevaplanamayan soruları da yani bütün sorulan sorular, cevaplanan sorular ve cevaplanamayan soruları da bu teknik eğitimler bittiği zaman bir araya getirerek size küçük kısa bir rapor halinde katılımcılarımıza sunmayı planlıyoruz. Böylece konuşulan şeyler de kaybolmayacaktır. Cevaplanamayan sorular da cevaplanacaktır diyerek tüm katılımcılarımıza çok çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Konuşmacılarımıza da çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Ve herkese iyi akşamüstleri diliyorum.
Evet, iyi akşamlar. Bize çok sağ olun, çok teşekkürler. Çok yoğun bir ilgi vardı yine. İlk programda biraz su ve kanal idareleriyle kısıtlı tutmuştuk. Bugün programı bütün katılımcılara açtık. Gerçekten oldukça yoğun bir ilgi oldu. Dediğim gibi bu tür webinarlarda Seda Hanım'ın da bahsettiği gibi bütün soruları cevaplandırmak çok mümkün olmuyor. Ancak bunları bizim sosyal medya mecralarında ilan edeceğimiz o rapordan doğrudan tamamını bulabileceğinizi umuyoruz. Konuşmacılarımıza çok özverili sunuşları için çok teşekkürler. Buradan hepinize katılımlarınız için çok çok teşekkür ederiz tekrar.
Thank you so much all. See you next time, hopefully in Turkey.
Thank you very much.